Hey guys, what's going on? This is Ash Kumra with DreamItAlive.com. I'm one of the co-founders, and I am pleased to bring you an amazing interview with Jack Canfield. For those who don't know, Jack Canfield is the co-creator and the author of the #1 book series, Chicken Soup for the Soul. He's the best-selling author of The Success Principles. He's one of the stars of The Secret, and he is a driven individual who wants to make the world better. So how are you doing today, Jack?
I'm really great, Ash. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm glad to have this. You have a deep history with us, just so you know. Dream It Alive is an online platform that helps people attain their dreams and goals using tools like Dreamboards, visualization tools, and law of attraction is very near and dear to us. And just so you know, the way we got Dream It Alive as a name is our co-founder, Anita, had the initial dream of creating our platform. I, Ash, said, okay, I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen. And then Erin is our CTO. She built the source code to make it come alive. So that's how Dream It Alive came about.
Oh, very good.
Well, you are clearly synonymous with law of attraction. I'm not going to ask you what it is. I think people know what it is. The better question is why does law of attraction work? And if you could share some examples in your life, let's not talk about right now where you've manifested everything you wanted, but those initial things that that happened to you that said, "Oh my God, law of attraction does work." Like, why does it work?
Mm-hmm. Well, people can argue about the why forever. I mean, there's quantum physics, there's your own subconscious mind, there's the vibrational field that you create that either is attractive to other people or not. I believe it works because when you are wanting something and you're vibrating at the same level as the thing you want, which is why we always say it's so important to, feel the feeling of already having it, to be in a state of abundance and gratitude and joy and aliveness, that when you put the desire into that quantum field, into the source energy responds to, then the thing that you want is drawn toward you. And if you're in a space of anger or upset or whatever, then you're kind of pushing that away. I mean, it works with people. When I'm upset, my kids don't want to be around me. When I'm happy and joyful, everyone wants to be there. If Robin Williams walks into the room, the comedian, everyone immediately gravitates toward him because they know they're going to have a good time. It's going to feel good. And so the universe seems to work the same way. There's the law of harmonics, which is things want to be vibrating next to each other. Just look at it in social issues. If you see a country club full of rich people, there's a bar full of drunks down at the end of the State Street where I live in Santa Barbara, because that's where the poor people hang out. And people are gravitating toward people who are vibrating at the same level. Kids talk about it all the time. I like going there. There's good vibes, or there's bad vibes. And so basically, I think the law of attraction is basically based on the law of vibration, which is everything's energy. And energy likes to play at the same level. One of the things that's really interesting, if you take a piano and you play a C chord on one piano, the same notes will start to vibrate on the other piano without ever touching the keys, because that vibration stimulates that. And so you start stimulating the things that are of like vibration, and they start to come. Either you'll be attracted to them or they'll be attracted to you. And I think what I've learned in the law of attraction, I'll give you an example because you asked for that, is that I lost my train of thought. Hold on. That what happens is with the law of vibration, well, that thought just went by, so I didn't attract that one very well. Somehow when I said I'll talk about that later, it went speeding out of my head. But basically, I'll give you an example, and maybe the point I wanted to make will come back. But for me, it all started when I was working for my mentor, W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone was a confederate of Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. They co-authored a book together, and Stone was once mentioned by Napoleon Hill as one of the two people that most employed his ideas and became super wealthy. When I met W. Clement Stone, he was worth $600 million, and that was back in the 60s. So that was like a billionaire today based on inflation. And he basically taught me, and he didn't call it the law of attraction, he called it positive thinking. And that when you're a positive thinker and you believe something's possible, we called him an inverse paranoid. He literally believed the world was plotting to do him good. And so that positive expectation of everything's going to work out, every negative event has a seed of an equal or greater benefit, he would always just visualize what he wanted, and it would always manifest. And so he taught me all these techniques of visualization, affirmation, positive thinking, doing what you love, surrounding yourself with positive people. And when I started working with him, I was a high school teacher, and I was making that's 1-8 with 3 zeros, $8,000 a year back in 1960, would have been 68. And he said, Jack, I want you to set a goal that's so big that if you were to achieve it, you'd know it was only because of what I've taught you. So I said, cavalierly, not even almost believing it was possible, I said, okay, I want to make $100,000 in 1 year. And that just seemed like, me saying I'm going to be a billionaire next year. And so I started doing the affirmation. I had an affirmation: God is my unlimited supply, and large sums of money come to me quickly and easily under the grace of God for the highest good of all concerned, as I easily earn, invest, and spend $100,000 a year. And then I would close my eyes and visualize what a $100,000 a year lifestyle would look like. Then I cut out a big piece of paper. It was probably about 3 feet long by 2 feet, 1.5 wide, and I drew it so it looked like a $100,000 bill. Put that on the ceiling of my room. Every morning when I get up, that's the first thing I would see. Close my eyes, I'd be reminded. I'd think about this and visualize this $1 million lifestyle. Now, I did that for 30 days and nothing happened. And then somewhere around day 30 to day 35, I was in the shower, and I had my first $100,000 idea. I had a book called 100 Ways to Enhance Self-Concept in the Classroom. Every time that book got sold, I made 25 cents. I thought, okay, if I sell 400,000 books in 1 year, I'll have $100,000. Now, the book had been out for several years, but it had never made more than maybe $2,000 a year in royalty payments, which was not bad. It was selling 8,000 copies. Book for teachers, not bad. But I now had a leverageable idea if I could figure out how to sell this many books. So then I started seeing all these extra, I call them resources. Once you've set a goal, then your reticular system in your brain opens up. It starts perceiving things it never saw before. Like right now, Ash, you're not aware of what you're feeling in your right foot, but as soon as I say it, you can feel it. So that information was streaming up your leg, into your spinal cord, into your brain, and it was being stopped by a little filter at the base of your brain called the reticular activating system. It acts like the appointment secretary at the White House. You and I could call and ask to speak to Barack Obama. We would not get through because we're not on the list. So the same thing happens in your brain. There's all these resources in the world that will allow us to be successful, that will fulfill the law of attraction, but we don't get to see them because our beliefs are such that we only are worth $8,000 a year, or I can't afford it, or I don't deserve it, or it's not spiritual to have that much money, or whatever. So it filters out that which doesn't match your beliefs. So when you set a goal, as I did, and you believe it's possible, as I began to with the affirmation, then this reticular system starts to open up, and you start perceiving these things in the universe that were either there or you're now attracting for the first time. And so I'm at my grandmother's house, and I'm in the bathroom where I've been a million times, and I see this book called Reader's Digest, or a magazine called Reader's Digest, which was always there, and it said 17 million readers in, 8 million readers in 17 languages. I thought, my God, if 17 million people or 8 million people knew about my book, certainly 400,000 would buy it. So I called up Reader's Digest and I said, I'd like to take out an ad. And they said, great. And they said, what are you trying to advertise? I told them about my book, and they said, well, it should be in there 6 times because people need to see it repetitively before they buy it. It should be a full page on the right, which is more expensive because that's where your eye goes. Bleed all the way to the edge, no border, because that's more brings the brain. They give me all this neuroscience about advertising. And I said, well, great, that sounds good. What would that cost me? And this was before calculators. It was like a, adding machine. I hear all this in the background. He goes, that'll run you about $108,000. And I went, I don't have $108,000. And even if I did, I make $100,000 on the books. The ad cost me $108,000. I lose $8,000. This is computing. So I hung up a little bit disappointed. And then about a week later, I saw National Enquirer. National Enquirer was 12 million readers, and that was much cheaper advertising, so I started visualizing that, and my wife said, hey, there's something in the magazine beside ads, there's articles, why don't you write an article about self-esteem or whatever it was, the book for Reader's Digest. So I sent it off, and it got rejected, but we're still just moving forward. And then I started visualizing myself in Reader's Digest and in National Enquirer. About 6 weeks later, I'm doing a talk at Hunter College in New York, and this woman comes up and says, "I'd like to interview you." I said, "Well, who do you write for?" She said, "The National Enquirer." And I'm going like, doo 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 doo, the Twilight Zone, right? So that took off. People started buying the book, and then my wife said, "Hey, we saw another resource that came into our awareness. If you were a bookstore, you'd make $3 a book instead of 25 cents because you get the full retail markup. Why don't we start being a bookstore?" So we created a bookstore. We had one product, my book. And we started selling that. And then my wife and I went, oh, people have proven they would buy a book. Maybe they would buy other books on self-esteem, parenting and self-esteem, cassettes on self-esteem. So we ended up with a 32 product, 8-page catalog. And we started doing, taking that to, different places. Long story short, we ended up with a bookstore with all these products. We'd take them to conferences. We'd make $2,000 or $3,000 profit every weekend. We now have like $100,000 a year business. I tripled my speaking fee from 300 a day to 900 a day, and eventually to 1,000 a day. And at the end of the year, we made $92,328. So we missed it by 700 some dollars. We were not sad. We were like, oh my God, this stuff really works. And then my wife says, well, if it works for 100,000, you think it'll work for $1 million? I said, it should. Let's try that. So we put $1 million bill. We may put that on a ceiling. Started to do that. And a few years later, I got a check for $1,130,325 for the first quarter of Chicken Soup for the Soul sales. And it's been like that ever since. And I could tell you stories about manifesting parking spaces, book co-authors, first-class seats on airplanes where there weren't supposed to be any, on and on and on. Once I started seeing this really work, it was just called, let's do it every day.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure our readers, especially people who want to be authors, would love to hear more about that and get inspired from this.